So you're in Hawaii.
No, I'm not in Hawaii. I'm
Oh,
in I'm not in Hawaii. Right now I'm in San Francisco. I live in the San Francisco Bay
oh,
Area.
okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I've not I have not lived in Hawaii since I was in high school, and that was a long time
Oh,
ago.
okay. Because I saw that somewhere, and so that stuck in my head for some reason. Then that's why I think you're an
Yeah.
hour behind me.
No, I'm not. I'm not. I asked you if where you were at was Hawaii time, was if Alaska time was the same as
Ah,
Hawaii time, and you said it
right.
wasn't. I'm not. I'm in Pacific time. I'm in California.
I haven't been to San Francisco yet or Bay Area. I want to check it out though.
Okay, that's cool.
But
I wonder if I should have put.
yeah. So hey, thanks for
Okay,
coming on. I started doing this because I like interviewing people and I like talking to people. I liked your profile, so just thought it'd be cool to talk to you, see what's up.
okay, cool.
So what do you do?
I mean, I'm a writer.
Nice.
Yeah.
What what do you enjoy writing? Like what's your style, your favorite genre?
I'm a horror writer. I've been nominated for a Bram Stoker Award for horror poetry twice, and I've been nominated for a couple of Elgin Awards for horror poetry as well. So I write a lot of uh, horror poetry, horror prose that includes short stories as well as novels. And in addition to that, I got the 2018 Afro Surrealist Writers Award. So I write Afro Surrealism and I write some like science fiction and dark fantasy. And I would say that probably everything that I write has some horror in it as the base. So I would probably say that horror is probably the genre that I most identify with and am associated with. Yeah.
Nice. Nice. I like horror. As a genre. It's always interesting. Um so what got you into it?
Into writing or into horror?
Both.
Both of my parents were fans of horror as a genre, so they were genre fans from the time I was like a little kid. And you know, back in the 70s, they didn't really separate. Like, let me put it this way, like, you know, my parents took me to see like The Exorcist and Jaws and stuff because
Right.
back then, even though things were R-rated, people just took their little kids to them all the time. As a matter of
Yeah.
fact, I remember, I think the first horror movie that I remember seeing in a theater was this like movie called It's Alive, which was about like a cannibal baby that like jumps out of the womb and starts like eating through like the doctor's throats and stuff with these really
Right.
sharp teeth. And like me and my brother were like 5 and 6 years old, and we were literally like swinging on the swings at the drive-in movie while this was
Yeah.
happening. So I feel like it was a different era in terms of like, people were very like feeling like it was fine for their kids to watch horror movies. And
Yeah.
yeah, and I think that even like things like the Twilight Zone and Outer Limits and stuff that were on TV, like, I know that those were science fiction, but I mean a lot of them were really kind of scary.
Right.
Like, yeah, sci-fi, like a lot of the sci-fi was like really like heavy duty, like end of the world stuff, like Planet of the Apes and stuff. I remember when I saw
Right.
that when I
Yeah.
was little, it was really scary. And I was an advanced reader, so I learned how to read really, like in an adult level when I was like in like third grade. And I think that by the time I was in fifth grade, I think that I read my first horror novel in fifth grade, which was Ghost Story by Peter Straub. And then when I was like 12, I read The Talisman, which was Stephen King and Peter Straub. And then
Yeah.
I became like a big Stephen King fan, which I think is not uncommon for horror writers. But also, I liked a lot of like Edgar Allan Poe. I was a fan of Edgar Allan Poe um, when I was in seventh grade. And, he's a horror poet also. And I think that that's kind of like the OG horror poet, like that, like honestly, like associated with starting it as a genre. But I started writing poetry when I was like probably in third grade. So, the first poetry that I wrote was, we were in LA, like around Hollywood and stuff. And my mom had some friends that were getting married, and I wrote like a poem for their like wedding invitation, and then her friends were paying me, and her friends had more money than we did, so we were using that money to pay the rent, honestly, and stuff like that. So
Nice,
yeah. So
nice.
and then I think also when I was like in third grade, I used to make up like horror stories to tell my little brother, because I have a brother that's 1 year younger than me, and those ones were about the skeletons, which were like kind of like skeletons that were reanimated, but they still had like a lot of meat on their bones that was kind of rotting, which is why it smelled bad. So those
Yeah.
were like campfire scary stories that I used to tell my brother. And one time, when I was in a contest, like back in like I think 2018 or something, called the Next Great Horror Writer Contest, they asked us to write a campfire horror story. So I wrote one called The Bride of Hernan Hespeth, which is kind of like a salute back to that. The stories about the skeletons, only this one, instead of it being a human skeleton, it's a reanimated cow. um,
Damn.
a vengeful skeletal cow that has meat hanging off of it. So yeah. So yeah, I guess that's how I started with horror as a genre. And as far as poetry goes, I think that when when I was in high school, I kind of was writing for the high school newspaper, so I started getting into journalism. But I think that I knew I wanted to be a writer, and I thought I was going to come out here and go to UC Berkeley, which I came out here. I did not go to UC Berkeley, but I
Too
did end up
expensive?
becoming. Uh, I would say that's just part of it, honestly. I think that I didn't get I didn't get an AA until I was like 50 years old.
Oh,
So I think there were a lot of factors in it. I think that when I was 50, I could have gotten into, I'm 57. When I was 50 and I got my AA, at that point, I only needed like 2 credits to be able to get into UC Berkeley. So I could have gotten into UC Berkeley at that time, but my mom uh, died of cancer in January of
oh,
2019. So it was coming to the end of her life. So I just didn't do it. But I think that when I was younger that part of it was economics, and part of it was my disability. You know, I have bipolar disorder, and I have post traumatic stress disorder, and I also have dyscalculia. So it took me so long to finish my math credits, honestly. Like I took the same uh like pre-algebra class, like I flunked out of pre-algebra in high school like 2 or 3 times, and then I did it again in college 2 or 3 times. So I had a really hard time getting enough math credits just to get an AA and stuff like that, and then I think that I had anxiety about being in a classroom setting, and it was hard to be in like um on larger campuses like the UC. I'm sorry, Berkeley City College, where I
yeah.
did eventually get an AA. It was a smaller campus. Like most of it was in one like I think 6-story building, and so it was less overwhelming for me. And I
You
got
like more
had to
one
get
on one. You
help
like more
pay.
one on one setting.
I mean, it wasn't a one-on-one setting. It had classrooms just like any other classroom, and they had disability services, and they had what you call uh, what do they call it when the people help you, tutors and stuff like that. But I think that it was just less overwhelming because I think that like when I went to San Francisco City College, it was a really like the campus is huge, and so it
Mhm.
isn't like a one-on-one setting. It's a smaller, like you don't, it's a difference between a campus that is something like uh I think like about half a mile long versus like something that's just almost all in one building. And I think that if I would have went to UC Berkeley, that I would have had the same, feeling of being overwhelmed by the campus size. So,
I
and
understand.
honestly, yeah. And honestly, my career as a writer, by the time that my mom died, it was kind of off the ground. So I didn't really need to get like a higher degree in English than the AA, which I have. So I
Okay.
just kind of ended up being a writer instead of pursuing more higher education.
What do you
Yeah,
what do you
but
uh what do you get out of it when what is it for you?
I mean, other than that, they pay me actual money. Yeah,
Yeah.
because they do pay me, especially now that I have been nominated a few times. It's gone from where they would pay me $5 or $10 for a poem to where people will pay me like $150 to write a poem. But um, you know, I feel like it's very therapeutic for me. I feel like I would have been writing anyway because I write all the time. And I feel like it's just honestly a choice of whether or not I want to pursue getting my writing published because I do the writing anyway. It's kind of like asking people what they get out of playing a video game or what they get out of going to a dance club and dancing or listening to music. I mean, I
Right.
like it. I enjoy it and I don't really, as a writer, as an artist, I've always been very prolific. Like I draw, I paint, I write, and I do a lot of it. Like I produce a large volume of content all the time, and that's been the case since I was a little kid. So it's just a part of, I guess, like inherently my personality. It's just stuff that I do. And when you're doing this stuff, you can either decide that you're going to put it out into the world where other people can engage with it, or you can keep it by yourself, like in a drawer. And I think that when I was a teenager, that there was definitely a part of me that was like, okay, I'm just going to take all this stuff and, put it in a drawer or whatever and just leave it there. And, my mom used to grab my stuff because she used to grab my stuff because it would just like I wasn't paying close attention to it, as a young person, because I didn't really see the value of it. But I mean, I was creating entire like comic books when I was like in seventh grade.
Nice.
So yeah,
She
there's an
recognized you.
urge. Yeah, she was a published poet herself. When she was published as a poet back when I was in grade school, and this was back in the 70s, so there was like this, like they had these velvet posters, and
Right.
her poem was published onto like a velvet poster, and like I'm biracial. My mom was African American and my father Ashkenazi Jewish, and so my mom's poetry was on like this poster with a just beautiful uh picture of a black woman with like this big afro, and it was
Like
like,
a neon?
yeah, exactly, like the kind, yeah,
Wow.
exactly, it was the 70s. It was the 70s.
Right.
These were the kinds of things that they sold in like psychedelic
Right.
like shops where they sell weed pipes. So
Right.
yeah, so she got paid for that, and she did some other stuff too. Like she put together the first who's who of like book for like African Americans. It's called Profiles in Black. So you know, she was doing stuff like that. So she probably did you know, feel like, you know, I could do it. And I remember when I was a teenager, she had me go to one of her friends in LA that was like an agent, and he was like, "Oh, if you want to be a writer, you're gonna have to change your name because your name's too ethnic." And he was trying
Yeah.
to convince me to change my name to Mickey Sauls, and I'm really glad I didn't do that.
What
But
was this
you
in the
know,
70s or this is in the 80s?
no, that was the 80s. That was like near the
Okay.
end of the 80s, I think, because like I was 19 in 1987, so this is probably like
Right.
about 1987. Yeah, and like I declined to do that, but I mean, I also like in the early 80s, or not the early 80s, sorry, the late 80s. Yeah, because I'm not that old. Um, in the later part of the 80s, I was doing a lot of like open mic poetry, and I had a couple of like poetry chapbooks that were just like very DIY punk rock stuff, where
Yeah.
you know you go like there were zines, you know, that you went and Xeroxed, and, you know, it's unlikely that any of those are actually still around, honestly. I got one of them in San Francisco in a place called McDonald's. There's a place called a clean, well lighted place for books. And then, like, they made fun of it. So they were called a dirty, poorly lit place for books in the Tenderloin, which is kind of like the poor, you know, neighborhood, like the Skid Row neighborhood, which is where I was living when I first came here. And, you know, I ended up being in the San Francisco Chronicle when I was 20 years old, and an article that they had about upcoming like neo-beatnik poets, because they had this whole movement which was like in their mind based on the beats here in San Francisco. So that's what they felt that this upcoming movement with, you know, like up and coming movement with like a lot of people of color involved, which, you know, really was spoken word poetry.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to, yeah, you know, spoken word poetry. So, um, you know, they interviewed me, and I had like I think 3 poems published in the Tenderloin Times, and they paid me like 25 bucks for 3 poems, which I think at that period of time probably was actually professional rates because it was a long time ago, or
Yeah.
semi-pro, maybe that was semi-pro rates. And it was a big deal to me because I was 19, I think, when I sold
Oh
them the three
yeah.
poems Yeah, so that's when I started doing poetry. And, you know, I did a lot of creative things, but, you know, I didn't really end up sticking with being like an artist, um, like a creative artist. I ended up being like a commercial artist because I ended up working in graphic design. So I just ended up working in graphic design, and the place I was working as a graphic designer was an Apple value added reseller, and they needed to have a certain number of people who were certified to do computer networking. And so one day they needed an extra body person, you know, to fill a chair. And they sent me, and I was able to pick up on it quickly. So they were like, "Oh, well, we should get Sumiko to do that." So then the next thing I knew, I was working in computer repairs and networking. And I feel like that's what ended up happening, is that I ended up by the end of the 90s, by the end of the 80s, I was working in graphic design and in computer repair and networking, mostly with Macintosh computers, and that continued until like after 9/11, I think. Yeah.
Wow.
And yeah, so, you know, I got sick with mental health issues in the beginning of the 2000s, and I wasn't able to work at a regular job. Uh, and I mean, I tried to go back to work a couple of times in tech, but it didn't really pan out. And then my parents got cancer. Uh, my dad got cancer. And both of my parents got cancer. Like around 2008, I think my mom had cancer, and then like 2010, my dad had cancer, and ended up becoming my mom's in-home health care aide. So when I started actually writing my novels and stuff, or when I started writing again, was when my mom was sick and I was taking care of her, because she would be at chemotherapy and I would be at her chemo appointments with her like 2 days a week. And so I just bring my computer down there and I'd be down there writing while she was in chemo. So that's how my writing career ended up getting started after like a long period of, me not doing it.
Yeah. Well, I'm sorry to hear
Yeah.
about that. I can understand. My both my parents passed. My dad passed of cancer, and then my son, my youngest son, he passed, and it's pretty hard. And my wife really she took care of him more so than and it was just it's hard. It's like a demon is coming to your presence and made this
Yeah.
person suffer really bad. So
Yeah. Cancer is horrible.
yeah,
It's awful.
yeah,
Yeah, I'm sorry that you experienced that. My both of my grandmothers died of cancer. One of my great aunts, my grandma's sister, died of cancer. And I think my father lost two brothers to cancer before he died of cancer. And I also have an aunt who's in remission. No, she's not really in remission. She's still fighting breast cancer, but she's been fighting it successfully for about 5 years. So,
oh
and
good,
my mom, my mom was really tough. She had multiple myeloma, and she was fighting it for nine and a
damn,
half years. So, yeah,
wow,
yeah. My dad, you know, he got lung cancer, and you know, he survived that. But then on his 6-month wellness check, they found out that he had liver cancer, and he was told that he only had 3 months to live, and he only lived for 5 months after that. So,
mm,
it was pretty fast with him.
yeah,
Yeah.
wow. Well,
Yeah.
I think we're good here. I appreciate you talking to me.
Okay.
You're very, very kind, and like like I said, I'm sorry about your family members. It's just
Yeah, it was a long
hard thing.
time ago.
I know.
Yeah, it was a long time ago. I mean, it was my mom died in January 2019 and my dad died in January 2013, so it's been a while, but
Right.
yeah.
Still,
Yeah.
yeah.
But
So
yeah, I talk about it in my poetry a lot. Of it is talking about things like death and cancer and stuff like that. Like
well,
I
that's
said,
reality,
it's there.
though.
Yeah, it is. That's reality. That's reality. And writing about it is a way to process it and it's very therapeutic. So yeah.
Exactly. All right. Well, you have a good night, and I'd like to bring you back on sometime.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. You
Okay.
take care.
Bye bye. Okay, you too.